Well, hello and dobro veče, as we would say in Serbia. This is Alexander Paunić, or as we would say in the United States, Alex Ponic. And tonight we are going to talk about how to win your first client in the United States of America. We did have a presentation about a month ago, and we promised you guys that we are going to continue on the path to show you how you can expand your business. And I want to thank the audience for carving up what could be 2 hours tonight, but hopefully we can give you enough value so you can learn more about expanding the United States, winning that first client, and even more importantly, having that recurring business. Well, again, this photo was actually, let me just tell you, this was taken in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is my home. It's Nikola Tesla. I want to thank USAID and Started for inviting me, and especially Tesla Nation. This is why I picked that photo. Unfortunately, there is a story behind this photo. The mural is actually no longer there, but you know, I'm hoping to see this mural again pop up. It was actually one of the landmarks in Tampa Bay in St. Petersburg, Florida. Today, we really want to talk about selling. And when I think about the United States and I really in market and advertisement, we really want to think about selling. And I will draw a lot of cultural and pop references during this presentation. And before I get into agenda and my own bio, I wanted to start with the quote of Jordan Belfort. I'm pretty sure that some of you guys maybe seen the movie The Wolf of Wall Street. Leonardo DiCaprio was not non-fictional, but the real character of Jordan Belfort, who is quite a figure, quite a selling icon, definitely not a moral or ethical powerhouse. But Americans have a very pragmatic way to differentiate. Okay, Jordan Belfort, definitely not going to ask him for advice, you know, how to live a healthy life, but maybe I can ask him for advice how to sell. And he has that famous scene, you know, sell me the pen. And he says selling is everything in life, and you're either selling or you're failing. And that's a very aggressive, very American way of looking at selling. I tend to like this quote because I believe you're all selling. I think some of you in the audience are saying, well, you know, I'm not in sales, nisam u prodaji, I'm a programmer or I'm in HR. And I tend to disagree. I think you're selling. I like to tell people, well, did you get a job that you wanted? And did you go through interview process? And they're like, yeah, but that's not selling. Actually, that is. You sold your employer on the idea that you're the right candidate for that job. I ask people that say like, well, I don't like selling. I ask them, have you invited your friend for a coffee today or this week? And if they say, yeah, I did, but that's not selling. And I tell them, well, actually it is. You sold someone an idea that 30 minutes or 1 hour, 2 hours with you is better than anything else they had in life. You're cool, you're loyal, you're a good listener. And they decided, you know, time is precious, but I'm going to spend it with you. So you sold them on that idea. Today, however, we're going to talk about more strategic selling. A lot of our audience is in IT. They have services, they have products, they want to position US. So we definitely want to talk about some of those strategic ways to position your product and service in the United States of America. Okay, so let's talk about my bio a little bit. You guys probably remember this slide from the last presentation, a little bit about myself. Again, Alexander Paunić in Serbia. In US, I'm Alex Ponic. I was born in Novi Sad a long time ago, longer than I want to remember. But you know, I lived in the States for 30 plus years now. And I was lucky. I played tennis. I was able to get a scholarship in high school and in college. So I went to the full US system. I have a double citizenship, US and Serbian. And, you know, I'm going to make some points of reference about my jobs even before I got into IT. But I got into IT 15 years ago, and I started working for a company, MX Logic, which was a cybersecurity startup that had about maybe 150 employees, but had a very cool product, and it was a very niche spam filtering product that attracted a big company, cybersecurity giant McAfee, And we got acquired by McAfee in 2009 for $179 million. And I was always in sales, marketing, and channel. I'm going to explain what channel is in IT world. But then, you know, United States is a very dynamic country and market. So in 2008, I'm working for MX Logic, which is maybe 150 employees. A year later, McAfee acquires it. It's a global company, you know, maybe about close to 10,000 employees. And then in 2010, Intel acquires McAfee for a blockbuster deal of $7 billion. So I was working for Intel. Obviously, at that time, it was a Fortune 10 company, 10 biggest companies in the world. And I was what they call a national distribution manager. Again, I was on the sales side, working with partners. Now, 4 years ago, with a colleague of mine, shout out to David O'Berry, we founded Precog Security. It's a Delaware corporation with an office in Tampa Bay, and our job is, my main job and core focus is cybersecurity and compliance. We help a lot of startups, actually, to position themselves with the US regulations, and we also help them minimize the risk of the attack. So this is a very interesting market, and we're going to dive into that in another presentation, which is going to be next month when we talk about procurement. Procurement is a really big part of selling. So when you actually do a demo and your client says like, yeah, we are ready to go, it's not over yet before you get your first PO, or they call it in Serbia, first factura. You have to go through a very stringent procurement, and cybersecurity and compliance is incredibly important nowadays. So we'll talk about that next presentation. Well, anyway, that's my main job. But I'm also a Serbian entrepreneur, Florida chapter. Serbian entrepreneur, it's a very powerful group. And we have chapters in San Francisco, New York, Toronto, Novi Sad, Belgrade, and I manage the chapter in Florida, and we have meetings in Miami. We actually help Serbian startups, you know, make a move and extend their footprint in North America. We, you know, make sure that they're put in front of the right audience, right venture capitalists, right clients, right strategic partners. So, you know, once COVID, you know, subsides and the normal travel resumes, you know, you will see me in that position more, and I definitely want to help some of the companies, you know, make those presentations and what we call a North American roadshow. You know, maybe in 10 days you can present in Miami, New York, and Toronto. Because of that, one of my passions was always sales and the business development and helping Serbian and Central European companies expand in the US. I actually just recently started a group and a program called IT Does It. It's really US business development as a service. So if you guys have any questions, how to position, how to be more strategic with your services and product, please reach out, you know, and I will put you in touch with my team. Okay, so let's talk about the agenda for today. Very simple. People that know me, they know I like the threes. It's very easy to channel and to make an argument in threes. But agenda for today, very simple. We want to show you how you can land your first client, how to put you in the position to land the first client in the US. Some of the audience is saying, Alex, we already have clients in the US. Still, you know, this is going to be a good exercise. You can always use more clients, right? You always want to scale. But we want to talk about three main things that's going to help you either win the first client or get more clients in the US. Prospecting, right? What really works, you know, when it comes to you expanding in US, how to Americanize your value prop, how to really build the pipeline, what works, what maybe doesn't work that well. I want to talk about presentation. This is probably going to be the core of this event tonight, this presentation. I want to talk about the pitch itself, how to sell. Unfortunately, I had the chance to listen to some Serbian companies with tremendous engineering and tremendous product trying to sell. And, you know, when they sell it in front of the American audience, I think they fall short with some of the specifics when it comes to the presentation. So I do want to touch on that. And then the follow-up. Right? in a perfect world, you want to do the presentation, you want to close the deal right there and then. Happens sometimes, most of the times you have to follow up. I want to show you how you nurture with value and how do you keep that prospect warmed up and finally get them, what we say in the United States, sign them at the dotted line. That means they're ready to go and they sign and they want your product and your service. So let's talk about the preparation. This is very important. I do see too many companies trying to skip this step, and there are a few reasons why they want to do that. They may be successful in Serbia, they may be successful in Europe, and they make the transition in the US, and they're like, oh, we know our stuff, you know, our value prop is great. We have great clients, a lot of clients in Serbia, a lot of clients in Central Europe or Europe. It should be the same in the US. Yeah, in a perfect scenario, you're hoping for that, but a lot of times you have to kind of take a step back, and this is a whole new market, right, with a lot of new details, right? So you have to kind of reevaluate your value prop, and is it going to stand in US? Is it going to scale in US, right? So you got to go back to the drawing board and really understand what is the vertical, right? What is that industry? Are American industries and verticals having the same pain point? Right? Regulation is a big thing. Everybody's talking about GDPR in Europe and in Serbia. Well, in US, we do not have GDPR. We have something that's called Privacy Act. There's 50 states. States have different privacy acts. It's similar to GDPR, but it's different, right? So I'm asking you to go back to the drawing board and really reevaluate. Do you have to pivot towards a different vertical or industry? Or you know, the industry vertical that you determine in Europe and Serbia is going to actually scale in the US as well. Size of the organization, right? I'm giving you a couple of slangs here. We like to say mom and pop. You're going to hear mom and pop, you know, when it comes to the size of the business. Those are really small businesses, and I would call those businesses that have probably less than 50 employees. You know, that's a mom and pop. SMB, right? Small and medium size, we call that in Europe SME, small and medium-sized business. You know, it's up to 250 employees. And then large is anything that's over 250 employees. Enterprise would be over 1,000 employees. So you have to figure out, okay, I was positioning this business, you know, to SME in Europe. Does that mean that I'm going to do the same in US? Or should I go a little bit more mom and pop? Am I more consumer, B2C, or am I more B2B? You have to reevaluate your strategy and making sure that it can scale in the US. Now, you know, US is 50 states. You know, a lot of people always ask me, like, well, how does it work over there? And I try to tell them, it's just as big as Europe, right? There's 4 different time zones. There's 50 different states. And one of my first jobs when I was still in college, it was telemarketing, and I was calling for a mortgage company. I was calling companies, actually residences, Americans, in the middle of the night, asking them to refinance. Americans like their mortgages. You know, they usually go with a 30-year fixed mortgage, and you're calling them to refinance, to switch the bank. Well, I quickly figured out, you know, when it comes to the location, you're going to talk different to people in New York versus people in Texas. You know, maybe to translate that in Serbian, like if you call in New York, that's like if you're calling Belgrade. People like fast, people like get to the point. But if you call in Texas, you know, maybe that's a little bit more of a Novi Sad dynamic. You know, people are, you know, maybe they're going to say, we're sitting down for dinner. It's okay to ask them what they're having for dinner. It's okay to have a conversation, you know, how do they cook their favorite food? So you have to understand those little intricacies, and you have to understand the latest dynamic. Right now in US, there's a very interesting dynamic when it comes to COVID. When it comes to the States, they're very pro-COVID protection. In some states, they're taking more laid back state or manner, if you will. For example, Florida, Texas, and Arizona right now are seeing the big influx of the companies moving from California and New York because their regulations around COVID and other matters are a little bit more relaxed. So you have to understand those intricacies. You have to understand those dynamics, and they're not set in stone, meaning they often change. So you have to reevaluate your value prop and making sure, okay, I have a value prop in Europe and Serbia. Do we have to make some changes and adjustments in the United States? Okay, so let's keep Americanizing that value proposition, right? We were talking about current trends. You know, you have to figure out those niches when it comes to the business. But then, you know, I'm really big on when you're looking at your pitch, right? I'm really asking companies, and like I said, I heard some pitches by Serbian companies. A lot of times what I'm seeing is a lot of information, but not really clear objective, right? Not very simple slogan. And sometimes they lack what we call to action, right? So I'm asking you to, when you go to your pitch, when you figure out what is your industry, what is your niche in US, figure out what is your objective, what kind of problem you're solving, and then maybe come up with a slogan that's going to follow your US strategy, right? Something that really cuts through and makes sense for American buyer, whether it's a consumer. Most of you guys are business to business. There's a great show on TV called Mad Men. I think right now I saw it on TV. It might be a Pink Family or something like that. It's going on every night. And this is an amazing show. It's very accurate. It does portray United States and New York in the 50s and 60s, but you're going to understand how important that message, that slogan, that advertisement is. Americans lived that for decades. So I'm asking you to come up with those slogans, but also come up with a clear call to action. What are you asking your buyer to do, right? Every presentation, mine today as well, is going to end up with a clear call to action. So you need to have that, what we call CTA, call to action. And then buying persona. This is incredibly important. I think we all fail. I sometimes fail at that too. I keep improving at it. But okay, you have a product, you have a service. You figured out what is your industry, what is your vertical. Okay, great, but it doesn't stop there. Who is actually the person that's going to sign that check? Who is actually buying within that organization? What is their title? Who do they report to? What is their organizational chart looking at? Most importantly, what is their pain, right? What is their problem? Like, let's say you're selling a product and you're selling to the CTO or CIO. You have to understand what is their pain. The best way to understand that is to ask them, right? I actually had a great conversation with one of our clients, cybersecurity clients. And yes, our main flagship service is what we call ethical hacking penetration testing. But I asked our top client in New York, what is keeping you up at night? What is your biggest pain? What are you afraid of this year, 2022? And boy, did they tell me, right? They appreciate that question because you care, right? So we figured out what is their pain, what is keeping them up at night, and you better believe it, when we position our service, we want to fix that. And then what is giving them warm fuzzy? This is a very interesting term. If somebody from the audience knows that American slang, warm fuzzy, but it's a very salesy slang. Warm fuzzy, literal meaning is like when something keeping you nice and warm. You gotta figure out that persona's pain, but you also gotta figure out what is making him happy. So when you position your product, and we're gonna go into the pitch, make sure that you show him how you eliminate the pain, but also show him how you're gonna keep him happy. That is sales and how to Americanize your value prop. Okay, so the big one is building the pipeline, right? I'm sure in our audience, we have amazing companies. I'm just always, every time I visit Serbia, I'm blown away what kind of great engineering power we have. And I love that we are transitioning and, you know, from outsourcing to building product. And I think we're going to see that more often, you know, as the time progresses. So kudos to you, more power to you. Now, you have this awesome product. You raise some money, you raise capital, and it's time for you to conquer the biggest market in the world, the United States. So you want to build a pipeline. And we like to say for startups or even the bigger companies, CEO, it's actually chief executive officer. Well, CEO in America, a lot of times you're going to hear it, you're actually chief sales officer, right? If you are a top person and founder, you're always selling your company. But some of you guys have more sophisticated, sales teams, VP of sales. You're hiring, outside sales consultants or business development managers. But now it's time for you to build a pipeline, how to do that. And you have different options, right? There's always those phone calls. I mentioned, when I was in college, my first job was making those cold calls. I was literally, interrupting dinners and asking people to refinance and switch banks. So you can always do that. Those still work. If you look at some statistics, yeah, you could hire some people to make cold calls. It works, but, statistics are very low. You could actually leverage LinkedIn. I'm seeing a lot of people using LinkedIn campaigns, which are not bad. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of automated LinkedIn campaigns. I do like more of a warm approach, right? I do like to actually, personally, myself, I contact people on LinkedIn, but before I would contact them, I would do a little research on them, their company. I would like to figure out if, we have common contacts. But again, I would try to figure out what is their pain, what are they trying to solve? And if I don't know, I would just ask them, right? So you can definitely use those. Email campaigns are still popular. People are still using email, although we're seeing some of the more sophisticated ways than just, doing a lot of email. But, these are still tools for you to start building that pipeline. Phone calls, LinkedIn campaigns, and email campaigns. Now, one of the things that I think we could actually have a whole workshop, maybe for a whole week, it's called channel. And this was something that I worked in for 15 years. And first time when I got a job, in the IT industry, it took me some time to wrap my head around what we call a channel. It's really partnerships and distribution, right? So the most basic way of channel, which I'm pretty sure everybody knows here, is you have outside consultant or outside company or outside person that refers you to a business, and you happily give them a fee, right? You tell them, you give them a percentage of gross revenue, or you have some kind of money dedicated to that fee. That's fine, right? That's a good start. But in the United States, when it comes to channel, it gets way, way more sophisticated than that. So, there are resellers, there are distributors. I can tell you, for example, my last job when I was working for Intel, I was that distribution manager, right? And in our channel, there were really 4 entities. There was an end user that was ordering an Intel product, but then there was a local reseller, some local IT company that was reselling that product. And then there was a distributor, right, that was selling it to that IT reseller. And then there was a vendor, Intel, that was selling to distributors. So it's a very sophisticated and complex partnerships, because you have 4 entities involved before the product actually reaches the end user. You don't have to get there right away, but eventually, if you're looking at, I want to be an enterprise company, you will have to have a sophisticated way to resell your product. And it goes beyond the referral fee. The rule of thumb is, if the reseller, somebody who is reselling your service, if they can take away bandwidth from you, if they can do support, if they can do invoicing, if they can sell your product while you are doing something else, more margin you give them, right? And like I said, this is a very sophisticated way. I've been more than happy to explain that in one-on-one, how you can structure the channel. But think about that. You do not want people just to, give you a referral. You want to spend some time to educate them how to sell your product, and maybe even to see if they can do invoicing for you, and maybe even see if they can do that tier 1 support. The more bandwidth they can take away from you, the more margin you can dedicate. Why? Because they're actually helping you with the customer acquisition cost. They're reducing your customer acquisition cost. So if you have really good resellers, phone call campaigns, email campaigns, maybe not going to be just as important. You're going to start concentrating more on the channel, because you're going to see that your pipeline is getting built through your partners. It's a great way to build a pipeline. And maybe the quickest way that you can get to your first client, and I'm sure some of people in the audience are nodding their head, is the referrals, right? I'm sure you have some contacts in US, and no better way than to ask them, hey, we have a great service, we have a great product. Do you know somebody that could use our product? So referrals are great. Even better, if you have already clients, ask your clients, if they can refer you business. This is something that it took me some time to understand how important it is. If you're happy with your client, if they're happy with you, and if you're confident that you're giving them incredible value, absolutely feel free to ask them, hey, John, how's it going, with our service? Great. Are you happy with the product? You are. Awesome. Look, we would love to ask you, you have a lot of contacts, you have a big network. We would love to ask you for some of the referrals. Americans appreciate that, right? So don't hesitate asking for referrals, and before you know it, they're going to introduce you to 2 or 3 of their contacts, and you have a pipeline. There is some math why referrals are important, right? They have the best conversion rates, right? Their customers are actually 4 times more likely to buy if they're coming from referrals. So if Jennifer is John's contact and she heard about you through the referral, which is John, she's 4 times more likely to buy than if you contact her directly through an email campaign or cold phone call, right? And then a lifetime value of the customer is 16% higher, and which brings to a lower churn rate, meaning the referrals are providing more value to you as a customer, and they're less likely to leave. So concentrate on those referrals and figure out how you can leverage them. Okay. So presentation itself, this is the big one, guys. We definitely want to talk about the pitch. But again, even, so let's say you have a referral, you're ready to pitch to somebody. You got to do more preparation about this particular company, right? So don't go blindly. You have your pitch deck, you have a presentation, and, don't just, use the same presentation for every single client. Research the company, research the client. Figure out if you have to change, maybe a value prop, maybe a slide, maybe something that could be interesting to that particular person. Figure out who are those key stakeholders. A lot of times, and this happens in the US, I'm guilty of the same thing. We're doing a presentation, but I'm like, you know what? I did not do enough research. Who's going to be on this call? Who is this person? All of a sudden, it happens all the time. You have this Zoom call. It started with one person, but this person starts inviting 3 or 4 other people. Spend some time, figure out who these people are. I already said in the previous presentations, Americans use LinkedIn. Chances are, 95% of chance, if you have a first and last name, you will find that person on LinkedIn. Figure out, what is their role? Who do they report to? It's incredibly important when you do your presentation to know who's going to be on that call. And again, identify who is the buying persona. Who actually is going to sign the check? Don't just limit yourself like, well, somebody in an HR department or somebody in an IT department. Who exactly in an IT department? Is it a CIO? Is it a CTO? Is it the VP of engineering? You have to know who actually has that executive power to get the things going for you. So you got to do that preparation before you do the pitch. So this is probably the most important slide that we want to talk about today, right? And let's start from the beginning, right? I've seen some companies from Serbia that are transitioning in the US, they have a sales star in Serbia, and they feel that same person is going to be the sales star. They're going to close all the deals in the US. Reevaluate, is this the right person, right? Is this person, do they have a charisma that's going to translate into American buyer? Is their English proper enough? Is it good enough to present to American market? So figure out, who's going to be presenting. And then again, who is the audience, right? You're preparing for your pitch, whether you're asking for money, you have a meeting with a venture capitalist, or, you're talking to a potential buyer, or maybe even potential strategic partner. You really got to understand who is in the audience. So the third bullet here, if you're going to write anything down, and if you want to remember anything from this presentation, I would definitely ask you to remember features versus benefits. Again, I'm guilty of the same thing. We all are. We all can get better at this. So features versus benefits means, let's say you have a great SaaS product. You have a killer feature, right? Yes, you want to present that feature, but you really want to zero in on the benefit, right? What kind of value, what kind of problem that actually solves for the buyer, right? So a lot of times we just talk about the feature, we know it's a killer differentiating factor, but we forget to really explain and quantify. Americans love the statistics. Okay, this is going to save me time, but how much time is it going to save me? This is going to save me money. How much money is it going to save me? You really have to, yeah, we got this great feature. This is what it does, but this is how it's going to make your life easier. This is how much time it's going to save you. This is how much money it's going to save you. This is how it's going to help you expand your operations or automate your operations. So make sure that you understand the difference between features versus benefits. In order to do that, you have to discover what are the frictions and pains. I've seen too many presentations, and I see it in US, and like I said, I can be guilty of the same thing. Sometimes we get so excited, we present, we forget to stop and ask questions. It's incredibly important to ask those open-ended questions. I've seen too many presentations. People they're confident, they have their slides, and they just go in and they present 10, 15, 20 minutes nonstop. Nobody wants to hear that. People want to have a discussion. We will have a discussion here, with the second portion of our presentation, our fireside chat. But when you're presenting, after each slide, what I like to do is, at the very least, ask a client, does this make sense? At the very best, I want to ask them, how was your experience? Have you done this in the past? What was your experience? What worked? What did not? They love those questions, and they're going to tell you. But you got to take a mental note. Don't just ask them and don't listen and don't pay attention. They will tell you. Because, for example, we do ethical hacking and penetration testing. One of my favorite questions that I ask our clients is, okay, have you done penetration testing in the past? And they will say, yes. I will ask them, what worked? What was a great experience with it? And they will tell you. But then I would ask them, what didn't work? What do you wish it happened, so that we can make sure that, that we delight you and we do that? And they will tell you. So ask those questions. People definitely appreciate that, because for them, it means you're paying attention. They're not going to be impressed if you just keep talking for 15 minutes. Have those points where you're checking back with the client. At the very least, how does that sound? At the very best, ask those open-ended questions. So what I like to say about selling, it's really not selling. When you think about it, you're really consulting. You want to get to that point. You're no longer this salesperson that's like, buy, I'm selling, you got to buy. But you're more of a consultant in a certain area. That's the area that you want to reach. You're not pitching, you're solving problem. And if you hit those marks, before you know it, they will go with you, right? Because there's a chance that the company that was presenting before you, they did things different. They were just selling, they didn't ask them those open-ended questions. They didn't figure out what is the friction, what is their pain, and they did not concentrate on value. So that's what you want to be. You're no longer, you have to have a mindset. You're not a sales rep. You're not selling. You're consulting. You're removing friction. You're removing pain. So you have to adopt that mindset. Handle objections, right? You're presenting, and there's going to be objections, and you have to learn how to handle those, right? The rule of thumb is you always want to be honest, right? And Americans really appreciate that. And there's that, it's almost a slang, and I think it's a little bit political now. But you can say, let me circle back with you, right? Sometimes I get stumped. Stumped means like when they ask me a question, I don't know the answer. I would say, you know what, that's a little bit too technical for me. Let me check back with my engineer and I'll circle back with you. That's totally fine. Way better than you kind of guessing or maybe telling them something inaccurate. You're much more honest and much more humanized, with that answer. Let me circle back. I really don't know, but I'm going to check back with you. It's going to give you ammunition, and we're going to talk about the follow-up. Obviously, you do not want to say, I don't know the answer for every question they ask you. You want to be prepared. But if there is one or two topics, very specific questions that you don't know, it's perfectly fine to say, you know what, that's a great question. I'll circle back with you after this call and make sure that I give you a precise answer. Next one. This is a big one. Don't bash competition. And very interesting one. Like I said, I worked for Fortune, 500 and then Fortune 10 company. And I learned from the seasoned professionals that in the long run, you do not want to bash competition. And sometimes it's going to be tempted. Why? Because your client, when you're presenting, they will say something. Oh, I'm so glad that you guys have this because company XYZ, they did not have that. We don't like them. And sometimes it's a bait. They want to see how you're going to react. And the best way to react, don't jump on that bandwagon and say, oh, yeah, they're terrible. And, they don't know anything. We are the best. It's a short-sighted answer. It's not professional. And, it does not make you look confident, actually. Quite the opposite. What you want to say, actually, they're a pretty good company. But I see your point, and the things that you need that they didn't deliver, we are actually very confident that we have a value proposition and that we have those features that will show you those benefits that you're looking for. So don't bash competition. Sometimes it can be a bait. They want to see how you're going to react, and if you jump on that and start bashing competition, it's just going to make you look smaller and weaker. There's always that objection of it's too expensive, right? When you hear that, you guys are too expensive, whether it's services, oh, we talked to the company Ukraine, they're much cheaper. Always go back to those pain points, to those friction points, to that value prop. Explain them why, defend the cost, and explain them how you're going to fix those problems, how you are going to remove the friction, remove the pain. But make sure you quantify. Make sure to show this, our feature, our product, our service has this price because this is how we are going to save you time. This is how we're going to save you money. And this is how we're going to make your life easier. Always circle back, always pivot back to those value propositions. Okay, so follow up. It's time to close those deals, right? We all want money. It's a good thing to have if you know how to use it properly. But I'm a big stickler after a meeting, whether it's a small or especially big meetings, definitely make sure you take what we call copious amounts of notes, a lot of notes. Make sure you capture them during the meeting. And make sure you send that follow-up email, even if it's in 2-3 bullets, what was talked about, what is the call to action. And then remember, if you have to circle back with some statistic or some kind of answer that you did not have during the presentation, that's a great way to follow up. And you want to make sure, if you're tending to be sophisticated organization that's growing fast, you want to have some kind of sophisticated CRM solutions. You do want to log the meeting notes in your CRM, customer relations management platform or software, because you do want to manage the timeline when those things happen. And then some of those CRMs have very sophisticated tools to follow up, to set up email campaigns. And what we like to do in sales, and this was one of my first jobs that I learned in US, there's 3 ways to, after a meeting, to make a decision, where's the sales status, right? Nurture, something that you're going to touch probably like once a quarter with some value, right? Something intermediate, they're not ready, right? But, they're waiting for a budget or maybe next month. So you follow up, once a month. And then there's that hot one, immediate, somebody who has the budget, who has an executive power, who has the need. You do want to follow up with them probably weekly or maybe even more often to make sure they sign on the dotted line and they go with the service. So, that would be a good way to kind of separate those nurture, intermediate, and then, hot. Based on that, your frequency, how often to follow up with the client. Okay, so nurture with value. This is also a really, really, really big one. And the reason is I see too many companies, so too many people, I'm being sold all the time. And sometimes I take a liberty when somebody's selling me to tell them, don't just come back to me and say, did you make a decision, right? Hey, just checking back with you. You want to follow up with some value, right? I always like, if I'm following up and I'm asking for business, I'm asking for the sale, I am trying to find some new statistic. I'm trying to find something that pertains to their role. Maybe there was an update in regulation. Maybe, in cybersecurity, we never lack content. There's always some kind of attack, but I try to relate it to their position. And when I follow up, I make sure, let me give them something of value, and then let me ask for business. Okay, so when I give him something of value, I feel confident I can ask him for business. I can ask for that sale. So please don't follow up. Hey, just checking back. Did you make a decision? No, add them value, right? Every contact, every time you contact your client, you have to add value. Holidays just passed, and I was really busy with our team, sending gift baskets. Another thing that I do is I'm novice at a wine business. I invested in a little wine shop in Tampa Bay. Shout out to Must Wine Loft. And I talked to my team that I wanted to send gift baskets, to some of our top clients and partners across the United States. It's a very customary thing to do that. I'll give you an example. My last job that probably my biggest corporate job that I had, what was called Intel Security at that time. I was managing tech data. It's one of the, actually right now it's the largest IT distributor in the world. It's a Fortune 86 company, and it's a massive company with a lot of executives. And one of the things I had to learn, how Americans treat holidays seriously. I mean, literally, I was thinking like, well, we'll just give them some gifts. No, they knew to a point which executive liked which wine, which cheese. They knew exactly what needs to be written on the card. This is a very serious thing to Americans. And think of it, it's a sales strategy too, because you can bet that your competitors are doing those kind of things. They're going after those buying personas, and they're making sure they wish them happy holidays. Sure, you can do a little email newsletter, but what's even cooler is to figure out if that person, you can always ask a gatekeeper, we don't want to say secretary, but gatekeeper, hey, does Joe or does Jennifer, do they like wine? Or do other companies send gift baskets? And they will tell you, oh yeah, they love that. Figure it out. Sometimes that's $100, $150, $200 expense. It works because the return on investment is going to be, thousandfold. So don't hesitate to send gift baskets to your top clients, or maybe a top prospect that you feel that you could close a business. That could be a differentiating factor, when you're closing business and when they're picking between you and your competitor. Here's another holiday that's coming up. Americans love Valentine's Day, and it's actually okay to send sometimes gifts, even for the Valentine's Day, in the form of chocolate, and wine. And you can say something on a note, love doing business with you. Happy Valentine's Day. That's totally normal. They're actually going to look at you as cool. And they're like, you know what? We want to do the business in the company in Serbia, because they recognize that we love Valentine's Day. And they send us a box of chocolate and wine. Let's do business with them. So don't be afraid to reach out to their gatekeeper and ask if it's okay to send a gift basket, and figure out, what's the proper way to send, what is the address, and that kind of stuff. Okay, so we're actually coming down to the last slide. I am going to do another pop culture reference. Americans love their movies, and they draw a lot of pop cultural references and slangs. Here we see Mr. Alec Baldwin talking about always be closing. This is, if you guys are writing down movies to see, for sales that Americans often quote, definitely Wolf on Wall Street. It's a fairly new movie. Mad Men is interesting, but Glengarry Glen Ross, this is the scene from Glengarry Glen Ross, where Alec Baldwin is one of the most quoted movies among American salespeople, right? And it's a fantastic movie, actually. I saw it even before I got into sales. I'm a little bit of a movie buff, but you have Al Pacino, you have Kevin Spacey, Jack Lemmon, Alec Baldwin, Ed Harris. They're all in sales. They're selling real estate, and there's some amazing, not just phrases, amazing selling tactics. Al Pacino, I don't want to give it away. Al Pacino is actually a top salesman, and there's some tremendous scenes how, you know, he uses what we were talking about, features versus benefits, to sell this property. But ABC, you know, Alec Baldwin is actually a manager. He's a top sales guy. He comes to the office and he tells his team, sales were a little bit slow. They were complaining about bad leads and whatnot. And he said, you always have to be closing. Every time you make a contact, you have to be closing. And you don't have to be as aggressive, well, buy my product. But I'm urging you, always be closing. Has to be lead with value. Show them how you're solving the problem. Show them how you're removing the friction. That's how you can be aggressive, and that's how you can be always closing. So having said that, I'm giving you guys again my LinkedIn. You can find me there, Alex Paunić. I would love to hear your feedback on the presentation. What would you like to hear? You can send me an email, alex.paunić, at precogsecurity.com. Like I said, we just recently started a U.S. business development platform. You can inquire by sending me an email there. And with that being said, I want to, again, prepare you guys that there's going to be 2 more presentations. Right now, we'll learn how we can land that first client. But I think it's going to be incredibly important. Okay, they said yes, but when am I going to get my first factura and PO? We call that invoice PO in US. Few things have to happen. You have to go to procurement. And how do you do that operational excellence? And how do you get that recurring business? That's going to be a next presentation. We're going to announce the date. It's going to be in a month. But with that being said, we will conclude this part of the presentation and go into a fireside chat. So if you give us a few minutes, stick around, get a bio break, get some water, coffee, maybe some rakia, and we'll join you guys here in the next a couple minutes with Vukash and Stojko from Started, and we're going to have some cool interaction and discussion about sales.
So, hey everyone, my name is Mukashin. I'm a founder of Start and Destination. And Alex, I would just like to say to you that I'm really, really stoked that we have a chance here to evangelize sales and business development knowledge and topics in Serbia, because as almost everyone, I feel that we've got so much talent and so much hard work that is not necessarily being fully realized because of the fact that we, aren't still in a culture where business development and sales and marketing are emphasized as much as product building and engineering, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but we definitely have some space for improvement. And first off, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. I feel like I've learned a lot personally, and I'm gonna just go straight at it, so that we extract as much value from you while we have you here. So I've got some notes here, and I wanted to start off with an anecdote. I wanted to share a story from my own experience, and then ask you how I could have have prepared for that situation better. So there was this client that we had. It was one of the big banks locally, and I was selling them a package of services in a relatively high value amount, and I was selling it for like 9 months. And finally, after like 12 meetings, I came to a meeting where I was expecting that I would be signing the deal, and I think I worked really hard for that. And then all of a sudden, this guy comes into the room and acts like he owns the room, like he owns the building, he owns the people there. And he's like, okay, what is this? Who are you? What do you want? This is crap, right. And I'm just like shocked, because I get that this is the guy who's probably making the call, but somehow I have just wasted 9 months of my time not being aware of that. So I think that by now I would probably know how to, and I've got, that was a big learning. I have some scars from that. If Luba is watching this, thank you for that. That was a great lesson. He's a really amazing guy. But how could I have prepared for that particular situation better in your view? I mean, you talked about this, but it may be good for folks watching this to absorb that lesson better.
Okay, so first of all, like you said, we want to thank people sticking around. Hopefully it's interesting enough. We want to try to make it interesting. And again, thank you for the kind words. But let's jump into your dilemma here. What you're talking about is the enterprise deal, right? And they have a very interesting, complex, sometimes lengthy, what we call a sales cycle. There's a lot of stakeholders. And sometimes what happens, the deal is taking such a long time, and I'm sure in our audience, they have the same examples. It took 6, 12 months, sometimes 18 months. Stakeholders change. There is a change in organizational chart. So you're working with one team. Let's say I had a slide where we have to identify those personas, the stakeholders, right? Everything's going great. You're showing up at the meeting, ready to close the deal, and all of a sudden there's a new, we call it new honcho, right? A new guy, new person, new executive that now you have to start selling all over again. And perhaps, sometimes this is their own internal matters, right? They're changing organizational chart. But what you want to do, again, when you're doing these enterprise deals, I worked with, I was lucky to work with these big companies, and I was lucky to work with some of the top salespeople in the world. And the way they approach these big deals, and these are sometimes $3, $5, $10, $50 million deals, with the Department of Defense, with Disney, with Sony, the amount of granular detail and how prepared they are and how much they know about their accounts, it's something that I was like, I was blown away when I started working for big companies.
Can you give us an example? What's the weirdest, granular piece of info they have?
So they would build internal, literally, org charts. They would we would look at the org chart, let's say in that case for the bank, and they would have regular touches in making sure as they're approaching the sales day, they would ask them, did anything change with the organizational chart? They would not show like, oh, we're keeping this, but they would ask a question through an email. Did anything change in the decision-making process? And we had those situations, and gatekeeper, somebody like, oh, we got to tell you, Jerry's no longer with us, or they moved into another department, or we restructured the way the budget is working, or we restructured the way how the decision-making process is going. You go back to the drawing board and figure out who is this person. You treat this meeting like this person is going to be there. You're expecting. You ask about this person. Do they have a different agenda? Do they have a different pain point? Do they have a problem with us as a vendor? Somebody's going to say, you know what, they like your competitor a little bit more. Then you get prepared. Okay, they're probably going to ask us these kind of questions. It's incredibly how they don't take things for granted in the United States, especially when it comes to enterprise deals, because you got to understand, these are $3, $5, $10 million deals. Commissions can be close to $1 million. When you can make sometimes, sales reps, I have friends, a very good friend of mine, his biggest sales deal was like $50 million. He made $1 million in a commission. And I asked them, how it went down, and what he did. He did a lot of that, right? He wasn't even like in a traditional way of selling, right? But he was just making sure that he has a relationship, what we call, he had a pulse on that organization. If something changes, he knew that. He didn't take this for granted. Oh, we did, 5, 6, 7 demos, and they love our product, and it's just a matter of time. They're paranoid till they see that factura or PO hit, and they get their commission check. But even then, they keep delighting their customers. So preparedness, org charts are important. Know who reports to who, if there are some changes. And I would say one thing that with those accounts that you want to win, find a champion. Who is your champion there? It could be a gatekeeper. It could be a manager. Somebody who likes your company, who likes you, somebody who you're going to send that gift, who you're going to take to dinner, somebody who you can trust that they can tell you what's going on. And obviously, there is some confidentialness that you're not asking for that. You're asking something that's shareable, that's public facing, but you need that champion. Identify the champion. I probably should have had one big bullet. Who is your champion within that account that you're trying to win? Who is going to be on your side when stuff like that happens? So identify champions and keep the pulse on organization and the decision-making process.
Thanks so much for that. And, I've learned even more right now. But at that point, I figured out that, 8 months, earlier, I could have just asked my champions there. I mean, folks with whom I had regular contact. Okay, guys, who's going to be making the final decision here? And even then, I could have known who that person would be and to ask for a meeting or anything with that person.
I think that's a great if you would have figured out who is that person, don't wait for to meet him at the official, ask for time,
I mean, or a phone call, a quick drink or anything.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks so much. And I'd like to give just one more anecdote, and then I've got a bunch of questions for you. And also, if any question comes through YouTube, the folks in production are going to pass it through to us. So I had another enterprise meeting. It was also a big traditional institution, and it was a weird one where I didn't want to go and sell. I didn't want to go to pitch because I thought that it's not going to be possible to get that deal, but because of some, friends over there, I, accepted doing that. I prepared a pitch. I mean, I did prepare it well, but I didn't really think that it was possible. So I didn't, in a way, want it. And I blew the thing away. I mean, in a good sense, I saw that people both on a call and folks in the room almost had the jaws drop on how well I presented in terms of how much confidence I had in what I was saying, and the tone of voice and the posture and everything, all because I in a sense, didn't care. I cared that I'm presentable to my friends who wanted me there, but I didn't necessarily want the sale, and I got one of the biggest deals ever that we had. So the question here is, I've heard sometimes that in a sense, if you're a salesperson and you don't have anything to lose, or you feel like that, or you present like that sort of, you know, brings your chances higher to actually close the deal. Is this a myth? Is this something, I mean, this situation that I described, I'm not, you know, giving it any, you know, special meaning. It could be just, you know, a fluke or something that I didn't really understand. But I heard that, you know, if you obviously are not sort of desperate for a sale, I mean, if you're desperate, that's obviously not gonna do you any good. But does having this vibe of, I don't necessarily need this, but I can, you know, get this. I've talked for too long. Can you give me your thoughts on this?
So there are two parts of the story, and you just hit the nail on the head. You know, one of the things, you never want to appear desperate. The people sense that, you know, it's a human nature. I don't care if you're in US or in Serbia, you just cannot appear desperate, and you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're not gonna sell if you're desperate. The other thing, and it's actually a tactic, you have to be willing to walk away, and they have to sense that. Again, that's piggybacking, it's leaning on that first notion. Don't be desperate, show them that you can walk away. So you want to strike something which you obviously did there. You want to be not too nonchalant, but you want to be, I'm sure you still presented value prop. I'm sure you still showed them how you're going to solve the problem, but you showed it in a way, hey, we are so confident. We definitely want to work with you guys, but listen, if you say no, we can walk away, and we'll put our efforts into somebody who's going to appreciate this. That's what brought them in, right? So you show them that you're not desperate, and you show them willingness to walk away. That's actually a sales tactic, right? We all use it sometimes, you know, whether it's selling, whether it's in romance, whether it's in you know, personal relationship. You got to show a person, listen, you know, I did everything I could, but you know, I don't have to be here if you don't appreciate me. I can walk away. That's what you did, and they appreciated that. But again, you know, it's not just like, you know, being nonchalant. You still had to hit those points of solving the pain and removing the friction, but definitely don't be desperate, and definitely be willing to walk away, and that's going to put you in a really good position with the client.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for that. And there was one thing that really sort of hit the spot in your presentation, for me at least, asking questions. So I feel like a bunch of us folks here in Serbia have this sort of, you know, cultural fear, or, you know, sort of a mental distance from selling, and fear of being perceived as being salesy, which can also translate into not feeling comfortable about asking questions. Questions like, okay, who is, you know, in charge of making this decision for purchasing this kinds of stuff in your organization, which is a natural question. You know, if we've been in even a little bit of contact, or questions like, what are your biggest pain points? Even questions like, what's your budget for this? You know, if you know them for a bit longer, can you tell us a bit more about the importance of being comfortable asking questions from prospective clients, and if you can tell us as well why they wouldn't take it against us? Because I feel like there's a sort of feeling with many folks who haven't been doing a lot of sales, that if we ask the prospective clients questions like that, it's going to sort of you know, make them less likely to work with us.
I cannot stress how important that is, right? You cannot ask very confidential questions right away. You have to earn trust.
Yeah.
But even if you're meeting somebody for the first time, you know, you can still ask very valuable, open-ended questions about their pain, you know, about their previous experience with the client or with a partner, with a vendor that provided similar services like you did, similar product. So you definitely want to concentrate on those open-ended questions and build some trust before you get to some more confidential, questions like what is the budget. But sometimes, they will give you that and they will say like, oh, I'm glad you asked, here is our budget. I cannot go over this and here's my pain points and I need you to fix this. Sometimes people are very, very pragmatic, but I cannot stress enough how important is that open-ended questions. And I cannot stress enough how many presentations I've seen both from Americans, but a lot from Serbians, where they're, just going into their pitch and, just talking about those features, but never really asking, never checking back with the client, never asking those open-ended questions. People appreciate that because when you ask them, they're like, okay, this person cares. They're not here just to pitch and to just drive their agenda. They're here to understand what's going on with my organization, what's going on with my position, what are my problems and how they're going to solve it. So open-ended questions, right? But like I said during the presentation, at the very least, when you're presenting, check back with them, take a deep breath after each slide. Does this make sense? Do you have any questions? That's an easy one. There's a whole science of how to ask a very good question, very targeted, open-ended question. So think about those. I think you should, before every presentation, you should have like, what are 2 or 3 questions that I want to ask them before I even, get a little bit more information. But let me do some research and have some what we call canned, prepared questions before every presentation. It's going to put you just in a great spot. But you want those presentations to kind of go back and forth. You want it to be discussion. More questions you ask, more answers you get, more discussion, more engagement, the better the chance you're going to close. You're definitely going to look better than the other organization that just goes and gives 20, 30 minutes nonstop presentation versus you, who is engaging, who is listening, who is writing down notes, who is following up with those problem solutions. So yes, open-ended questions. If you don't know what those are, you can research, but those are the questions that are not warranting short answer, yes or no, but more of a discussion and long sentences in answering.
And that was actually the thing that I wanted to ask you for those folks in the audience, just to make sure that they understand what an open-ended question is.
Right.
So awesome. Thank you so much for that. And when I was listening to you talk earlier, when you mentioned not bashing your competition, I remembered many of the situations where a client, a prospective client, actually would ask me about a particular competitor. And I myself trying in that moment to both be a gentleman and be nice, even though perhaps in some particular situation I would have liked to say, yeah, those guys are a clown troupe imposting as a which might or might not be fair. Right. We are all subjective. However, sometimes I fear that folks from Serbia tend to be too nice. And I feel like just now you, in your example to us, you provided us with an example where you pivoted. So you have been given a sort of a bait to bash your competitor, but instead of that, you pivoted into, yeah, they're great, but here's why we're better. Right. And this is in arguments, not no, they're shit and we're awesome. This is something that I feel is a finesse that is sometimes lacking in our crowd. So could you tell us how to find a balance between being too nice and being non-assertive? Right. Because if you're a salesperson and somebody asks you about the competition and you say, yeah, they're nice, they're going to be like, okay, these guys are not necessarily, we should probably go to those other guys. Right, yeah. Right. So how do you find that balance?
So like you said, it's very tempting, right? Yeah. Sometimes it's going to be a bait. And yeah, I think it just comes from different personalities. I had the Americans asking me like, oh, let's put $20,000, $30,000 American sales reps to bash the competitor. And I would say, no, let's put $20,000, $30,000 to show the value of our product and features and benefits, right? Yeah. So basically, it's tempting to bash the competition. But if they would ask me, well, your competitor did this, I wouldn't go as far as say
Yeah.
they're great. I would
Yeah.
say, listen, they're a good company, but we have some key differentiating factors, key value props that I'm very confident that we can solve a product. So I would just cover, the company. Look, they're a good company, but here is why we're better in a nice way, right? So I would acknowledge, all right, I'm not going to do, bash my competition. I'm going to acknowledge they're a good company, they're okay company, but here's the key differentiation. Just pivot back to how am I solving your problem, and that's actually why we are different from that company. But I think in the long run, right, it's tempting. And even if they're like, sometimes they're going to be honest, they had a terrible experience with another company, acknowledge their pain, but I would say do not engage with in bashing. Just think about we all watch National Geographic or Animal Planet. Think about the safari or Africa. You see a lion, right? Lion is now going to get engaged. They're going to ignore smaller animals, hyenas, right? You have to know your value, right? If they're trying to get you to talk about your competitor, you want to talk about why you're great, why you're the king of the jungle, why you're the top solution or product for them. If you would have representatives of Fortune 10 or Fortune 100 company, let's say if there's somebody from Coca-Cola or Nike and they're trying to tell them about a smaller competitor, they're probably not going to get engaged, because that's going to give value to the competitor. They're going to talk about their value and how they're solving the problem, and that gives them more power. That makes your platform much bigger, rather than, we call it, being petty and picking on your competitor. Absolutely acknowledge if they had a pain with a competitor, but quickly transition and pivot into why you are a company of choice, whether it's a service or a product, and how you're solving for their pain and problem.
So there's a sort of a digression I just have to make, because there was a sort of a culture shock for myself and a couple of my friends at a time when we first heard of negative advertising in the US. So some folks may have seen TV ads where the cola wars, for instance. So Pepsi or Coca-Cola would go out and buy huge amounts of ads, saying, hey, Pepsi is bad, Coca-Cola is good.
Right.
And I think that even at that time here, and perhaps it still is, banned to even do negative advertising. And then if you look at politics, most of the time you're gonna see a lot of politicians in the U.S., which is a very civilized country, despite of all the media hysteria. There's a lot of constant attacking happening over there. So should we be prepared to be I'm going to say extra assertive or borderline aggressive when it comes to sales in the US? Because it seems to me, at least, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the cultural standards there are a bit edgier than perhaps in Europe. Have you noticed that at all?
Well, it's a they call it a slang, cutthroat business, right? Sales, you have to be ruthless. But I would like to see some statistics. I remember, living in the United States in the 90s, there was a lot of those. And I think it was mostly Pepsi, trying to go after Coke. And again, because Coke had a bigger market share, they felt like, we don't have to go to their level, right? We're Coke, we're bigger. But yeah, there's sometimes those campaigns, but I'm not seeing those a lot, right? Sometimes I would see them during the Super Bowl. I would love to see some statistics. How many of those ads, how many of the marketing budgets are used as battle cards, we call it battle cards, against a competition? There's going to be attempts. People, that doesn't matter if it's in the US or Serbia, they're always going to try to, okay, let's go after the competition. But I think in the long run, you always want to go aggressive with your value prop. Why am I solving for your problem? And even you mentioned politics, right? There were some statistics, and I have a lot of obviously US friends, and I see how they react when, if your campaign is bashing a competitor. A lot of people say, if that's your platform, bashing a competitor, we don't know anything about your program, right? How are you going to make my life easier? I think in the long run, it's tempting to go after the competitor and just, bash them and talk, why they're bad. But I think it's much more valuable in the long run. why I'm a better choice, right? Why, you know, I can solve those problems, frictions, why I can, again, quantify saving you time, money, and make your life easier. I think in the long run, that's always a better bet. But, you know, don't be shy to, you know, say like, hey, we feel, are you better than a competitor? Of course you feel it. Say that, right? And, you know, quantify why, but don't nitpick on your competitor. Oh, I heard they were doing that. Did you know that my competitor also did this? It's going to make you look smaller. You want to show them that, hey, most of our time we are dedicated to solving your problem. You know, I would always challenge my marketing department. Hey, let's put that money, you know, to good use, where we show our features and benefits, you know, maybe fly our customers and partners to try them rather than, you know, bashing another company. I think, you know, the ROI, return on investment, is better in the long run.
Super. I think we covered this, you know,
Yep.
Very well. So, but I really feel that it's an important topic, and that's why I wanted to
Very important.
jump onto that. Especially, you know, I think that there has to be a lot of acculturation for Serbian folks who go to the US. And, you know, I wanted to just point out a couple of things that are probably sales 101, but to me, which, and I think I have done, you know, a fair amount of sales and been, you know, moderately successful at that. It was really amazing to me that you you know, sort of put sales and consulting in like parallel. You talked about it already, but can you just sort of tell us again, why is that important? Well, what, you know, I think you said something like, you know, consulting is selling, selling is consulting. Right. Doesn't, you know, it's not necessarily intuitive.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not. Well, selling is a dirty word. Like, nobody wants to be sold, right? Nobody wants to say like, I'm a salesperson. But you know, top salespeople, they will tell you like, we're problem solvers, we're consultants, right? And in order to reach that, you really, you have to be confident, but you have to be knowledgeable in that area, right? You have to feel like confidently and empirically that you are solving the problem for your client. You have to feel like you're the one that knows the most about that topic, right? So you got to start with that knowledge. You're utmost expert in that certain field, or your company is, and your team is, and then really go, I'm not really selling you. I'm making your life easier, right? I'm consulting you how to, you know, if you have an outsourcing company, you have 50 programmers, they're ready to do that end-to-end solution, you know, for your big client. You're not selling them, you know, some warm bodies and hours. You are really consulting them how to get that solution end-to-end, and how you're going to, you know, have a great SaaS product or great software, you know, enter the market. So it's really about being confident, but being also the expert in being a problem solver for the client. So that's where you transition. You're no longer selling, you're consulting, you're providing value. So, you know, people are probably saying like, man, we heard this value thing, but yes, that's the thing. Figure out, you know, how are you providing value? At that point, your client, your end user, you know, when they're cutting your check, when you send you the factura, what they say here, or a PO in US, or invoice, they don't feel like, oh God, we have to pay for this, but they feel like, hey, they're getting a lot from it. They're actually in a great position by paying you. They're getting so much out of it. If they go somewhere else, you know, they will not get that kind of great deal, that much value. And it's always, that's always the scenario that you want to strive for. There's just so much value that you're providing with your service and the product. They don't feel, quote unquote, bad that they're cutting your check. They're like, we know what we are getting for it, you know, and they don't feel like you're selling them. You're consulting them. You're guiding them through, whether you're building a product, or whether you're solving something, or whether you're providing security service, you're guiding them through that, you know, sometimes complex environment of either building a product, or, you know, being compliant or being secure.
Awesome. So that's amazing. You know, in some sense, it reminds me of freemium. So provide a couple of things for free in order to, well, upsell. in good faith, obviously. So that was awesome to me. And one additional thing that was really, really great for me to hear, after hearing it, I remember seeing that, and probably I've read an article or two about it, sometime, during my career, but following up with value. So one thing that I feel that folks in Serbia are still learning, but I think that they've learned it, better than, that the level of knowledge is higher than, let's say, 5 or 10 years back, is following up and being like going to the line of being aggressive and being impolite and following up for 7 times. That's the number that keeps popping up for 7 times, unless you get a yes or no. But for the first time I've heard this follow up always with a bit of additional value. So that was really, really great for me. I don't feel that you necessarily need to tell us anything additional, because you provided an example, I think, that you said. So if you are selling to some folks who might need cybersecurity services, you might provide them with an update on some legal stuff, because they obviously need to know that, and that was really great for me. And one additional thing that really caught my attention was providing gifts to your clients.
Right.
And recently, my team and I, sent a bunch of gifts to a cohort of our partners, and because we were genuinely thankful for a couple of things that they did to us, and the level of our relationship, it rose beyond our expectations. So that was an interesting point to me, and so I just wanted to confirm with the audience that what Alex is saying is definitely a good thing for both for the US and here. And since you mentioned holidays, I was always wondering, should you go for gifts for holidays, or should you go for a different sort of occasion? Because all the companies send all the other companies gifts, in time of holidays, and you might be lost in the crowd. Is this something that we should be keeping in mind?
I think you just got a little bit more salesy than I did, that's a really good point. The slang is lost in a shuffle, where there's, you're right, Christmas, or holiday season, that's more politically correct term, is, probably the biggest time that you want to send these gifts. Like I said, I work for major corporations with a really large budget. I cannot explain you. My December was literally managing all the gifts. This is like thousands and thousands of dollars gifts. Who likes what kind of cookie, what kind of cheese? I thought it was silly, when I took on that position, but then I quickly figured out how important that is. And yes, you're engineering powerhouse. I got it. You got this great product. But think of it, there's another great engineering powerhouse that's maybe similar products, similar SaaS features. Sometimes those little things can decide, right? And make sure, we're talking about being prepared. Make sure that you do that. But to your point, I would probably pick, I really like what you said there. Monitor your top accounts. Monitor if there's something going on. Probably, holiday seasons around Christmas and New Year's, you want to send it probably beginning of December. That's going to ensure it's not lost in the shuffle. Things are crazy in America, week before Christmas. Never wait for a week before Christmas. Do it 1 week after Thanksgiving, right? That's the last Thursday of November, but like first week of December, that's when you want to start sending those gifts. Valentine's Day is kind of cool, hey, I love doing business with you. You can send them a heart-shaped box of chocolate. But then there's that third one that you mentioned. Monitor if they just did a massive deal, right? If they did a massive merger, if maybe they changed the name, if there was a new acquisition or something like that. And that's going to show that's going to make you stand out in the crowd, right? Where you're paying attention. Hey, we want to congratulate you on that acquisition. A great quarter, right? Some of these companies are, making the revenues public, and that's a fantastic idea. And I actually going to use that. But it doesn't have to be excessive. But everybody's doing emails. Yeah, congratulations. That's fine. It's better than nothing. But sometimes $100 gift, $150 gift can go a long way. And if you go on American websites, sending gift, they call it gift baskets. It's a massive business, right? They have it figured out to a science. How to send flowers and cheeses and wine and all that kind of stuff. Ask a gatekeeper, figure out what happened, but I would maybe concentrate on those 3 occasions, like holidays, around Christmas, maybe Valentine's Day, that's a big one, and then one very specific thing that happened for that organization where you can show them that you're paying attention, that you're celebrating their successes, and they're just going to strengthen the relationship. And when they decide who they want to work with, they're going to remember that, couple of bottles of champagne and a little cheese. They're gonna. It's an
organization, perhaps. If I may interject,
yes.
It's a person thing.
It is.
I'm doubtful that a person is going to type into CRM. These guys are really nice. They send me a gift. But it's a person to person.
And Americans will say that. It's definitely sales is a contact sport. You want to make those contacts, and it's those personal relationships. That can take you far. I can tell you, I met some people, in sales in IT companies. They're not even technical. They have tremendous positions, executives. They don't know much about the engineering, but they have it to a T, those personal relationships, right? And they know how to manage those. And those personal relationships are incredibly important, right? And I know it's so tempting to say, like, we have tremendous engineering, that's fine and that's great. You need to have that. That's a foundation, right? That's a number one thing. You have to have a sound product, but then it's those little things, down to a science, who are those personal relationships. You want to find those people that have technical skill set, but they also have those people soft skills that we would say.
And at the moment that you were saying, like, find out what kind of wine a particular person likes or cheese or whatever.
Yes.
And I was going to say, okay, but how do I find that thing out? And then you said, okay, go to a gatekeeper, perhaps an assistant or a champion, or just find somebody who can really dig deep, down Google.
And sometimes it's not even that deep, It's just hey, we're thinking about sending the gift baskets. Do they like that? Oh yeah, absolutely. And they love Pinot, let me tell you, They will divulge that kind of information. And it's a little simple question, you write that down, and there you go. You're ahead of your competition. Instead of bashing your competition, you're sending wine. That's going to be the competition. That's being aggressive, and that's being smart, and that's being clever, and that's being salesy. That's how you want to be aggressive.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I almost want to wrap it here, but I'm gonna have just a couple more questions, and if anybody in the audience would like to jump in, this is probably your last call. You mentioned earlier that one should be cognizant of what particular territory or city state they are targeting. You're not talking in the same way with folks from New York or folks from Louisiana. Is there any particular region or state that you feel would be a good training ground for, let's say, startup founders from Serbia who haven't done a lot of sales, but they know they have to start. And if you're the CEO of a startup, you're not necessarily gonna hire put a bunch of salespeople in a boiler room. You're gonna have to do it yourself. I mean, you have to. Is there any particular state or region that you would recommend as something to start with, with yourself knowing, what kind of mentality folks here have and what kind of mentality folks in the various regions of the US have?
Oh, that's a great question. Just this thing alone, it could be a workshop.
Yeah,
Probably one of my favorite questions, because it's business and it's culture. And like I said, there's a lot of dynamics going on right now, where a lot of companies are moving to Texas, right? So, I mean, if you're looking for automotive industry, you have to be probably in Detroit and Michigan, right? But if you have a SaaS product, solving some kind of operational product and problem, and you're looking at US, and you are not really tied to a specific niche, but more buying persona. Hey, we want to go after the VP of operations because we want to make their life easier. Just see what Americans are doing. Like I said, they're moving to states that have a little bit less regulation, right? A lot of companies are moving to Texas, to Florida. There's if you would ask me to pinpoint, one region that would be most probably aligned with our mentality, but you will still have a purchasing power, I probably will say Florida, Miami, where we met, right? And I really like Miami for a few reasons. Texas is also great. People don't understand. Texas is an economical powerhouse, right? It has a massive GDP. California is still, when you look at the GDP, top 10 GDPs in the world, right? I think it's still 9, but some of the companies are shying doing business in California because the regulation can be really tough, right? If you have some very specific value prop for the tech companies in California, by all means, right? But if you would ask me where the sales cycle might be a little shorter, where the mentality will be a little bit closer to Serbia, and I would probably say Florida and Miami. There's a lot of Latin American companies there. There's a lot of Latin American attitude. It's really America in the sense of that melting pot, right? You have your American way of living, but you also have a Latin American way of living. It's a metropolis, and Florida tends to be a little bit more lax when it comes to regulation. COVID is a big thing right now. This is becoming very political, obviously. But for example, there's a little bit more relaxed regulations when it comes to COVID. By all means, we are encouraging people to take pandemic and COVID seriously. But you're looking for those little breaks, little laxed, things where you can concentrate more on selling and concentrate on a big market. So it's probably Florida and Miami.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I would say that also Florida has an additional benefit of being in a closer time zone than say San Francisco.
And I would also add one more thing with Miami. Big companies, and we are using that right now with Precog Security. It's a gateway to Caribbean and Latin America, right? So when you're selling in Miami, you're selling in Southeast America, which is a big market. Florida is a very strong state economically, but then also, before you know it, you will get some opportunities to sell in Caribbean, right? And also in South America. So that's an added value with Miami.
Awesome.
Shout out to Miami. So I spent a lot of time there. I really love the city, and it's very interesting.
It was one of my biggest impressions of all the cities that I visited. Well, I mean, obviously, each one has its own, perks. But one thing that I wanted to just share with the audience and yourself, you were in telemarketing. I was doing cold sales. I was just, calling people, from the phone book in the UK, which was like the worst. I mean, for myself, and in the US, and I had the most success in Illinois and Texas.
Wow.
In Illinois, I actually had most success with immigrants.
Wow.
Folks who have gone to the US like 30 or 40 years prior to that, and they were open to hearing from somebody who has an accent as well as they do, and that made me think of Florida. It's an immigrant country. It's open to new stuff and new people. So that would be a good thing. And perhaps one additional question, and probably that could be a good place to wrap things up. When entrepreneurs from Serbia are going out on their first sales drives, into the US. You mentioned also that they need to do their homework in terms of mapping out mom and pop shops, SMBs, and enterprises or corporations, as folks call them here. Do you have a recommendation of where folks should start from? Should they go after super small businesses? Should they go for middle businesses? Or I'm pretty sure that you're gonna say that they shouldn't go for enterprises.
Well, yeah, enterprises are always something like, oh, if we close one enterprise, we got it, we made it, right? But it's such a competitive market. You have to have a tremendous product experience selling to enterprise, and frankly, you're going to have a strategic partner that's already inside that enterprise account, right? But it just depends on the product, the service that you're doing. For example, we like with our security services to go after the SMBs because we are providing that additional value add where they don't have enough personnel, right? For example, the service of ethical hacking, security assessment. We see that SMBs might have one or two IT people, they're handling that. They could use more manpower, women power, to handle some of the problems. So we're finding a lot of successes where they see like, wow, we cannot find that kind of value. We cannot find that kind of talent. We could definitely leverage you guys. So it just depends what is your value prop. We're finding a lot of successes in SMBs, right? Up to 250 employees. But if you feel like, hey, we're going after enterprises, we have end-to-end solution building, we have 200, 300 programmers, right? I would definitely suggest if you're going after enterprise, have a partner. Have somebody who is already inside and figure out with them some kind of partnership, some kind of reselling method, a margin that they are going to position you inside, right? And not just for a referral fee, but educate them, right? It's going to be hard to sell to the enterprise account, just directly, right? So when you're selling B2B, we were talking about that, you can sell direct, but you can sell through the channel. I can tell you, if you're selling to that enterprise account, there's hundreds of companies that are trying to sell. Somebody already maybe positioned better, and not just with gifts, right? With very specific contracts, with already done demos, with relationships. They figured out the margins. So even if you do one good demo, right, it's a long way, and there's things in the scene, in the background that you don't know that's going on, and it can be a very expensive and lengthy sales cycle. And then at the end, you learn that you didn't get a deal because somebody had a partner, system integrator, or somebody who is already inside the account, they had a relationship with the system integrator and you did not. So it's a very risky proposition, high reward, right? Yep. If you can close it. But I would say we are finding success in SMBs. I think a lot of our audience, they have the outsourcing firms or they have a SaaS product. SMBs tend to be, lacking in IT power, lacking in automation, lacking in R&D departments, but they do sometimes have money, great revenue, and they need help, right? So in American SMBs, these are companies that make $5-10 million a year. So you could position yourself just, pretty strategically there. But again, it all depends what you're selling. Maybe you have a B2C. Maybe you're selling a consumer product. Maybe you can go after those, even residential. But figure out again what is your value prop, who's your niche, and then then figure out what is the size of that organization and who is the buying persona.
Super. So we got a question, or actually a question from two parts, and I feel that's going to be more than sufficient for today. We've got two more sessions. So Lazar is asking, how would you propose that he goes into selling his presentation trainings, which he successfully sells over in Serbia? How would you propose that he does that in the US? And in addition to that, I mean, actually, there's a second part which is not necessarily connected to this, but perhaps if you would care to offer some inputs here, I guess it would be helpful to Lazar and perhaps some other folks.
Do we know? First of all, thank you, Lazar, for the question, and thanks for sticking with us. It's almost coming on 2 hours. But what do we know? What is the industry? What exactly is the service?
So presentation skills coach. I'm guessing that goes
So
for
that is the
business. Yes, he's coaching people how to do those.
How to present.
Teaching people how to present.
That's an interesting. So
he wants to do that in the US.
He wants to present how to present.
Yeah, to sell those services. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, again, you have to find out who has the pain. Not every American is a good salesperson. I can tell you, I found a lot of people that are not good at that. Presentation skills can be, it's very valuable, right? Americans are, you know, spending a lot of money, you know, that comes in from the sales and marketing budget, right? And again, SMB companies are sometimes a really good fit because they're growing fast and they're seeing that they don't have the manpower, woman power, right? They don't have enough salespeople, and they don't have enough presentation skills, right? So I would say probably concentrate on that market, but then you know, you have to look at that slide deck, right? Is this something that's super basic and it's good for Serbia, or is it can be more sophisticated and help in American market? I actually, when we were working for McAfee, we would hire sales consultants all the time, right? And I can tell you, you know, we had like some killer, shark salespeople, but they were always working on the craft. So you position, if that's what you position, presentation skills to American companies, yeah, absolutely, it can be interesting, especially, you know, maybe for the companies, since, you know, obviously they're going to know you from Serbia. For companies, they're trying to venture out, you know, to Europe. You know, maybe that's also a very important segment. Americans are very interested to position their services and products outside US. They know that there's a lucrative market in Europe. So I would say probably an SMB market, somebody who is lacking in sales skills, does not have enough salespeople. You know, you can reach the owners. They're going to tell you. You can ask them like, hey, you know, I'm, you know, helping organizations be better at presenting. Again, that's a feature, but then go to the benefit, like by, you know, your people learning how to present, you actually going to be able to see more revenue. And if you have some data, you know, if people go through your class, you know, how many deals they used to close before that, but if they go to a class and get those skills, how many deals they can close, you know, that would be a good way to position it. So, you know, probably a fast-growing company that does not have skill set to sell. They need some presentation skills to be trained on, and maybe somebody who wants to position themselves, you know, kind of reverse the table and then position themselves in Europe.
And one additional one, since you mentioned that you should be willing to show that you are willing to walk away from a sales meeting, that you can always, you know, go to other offers. Obviously, you're never gonna say those words in a meeting, like, you know, we can walk away, we don't need this business. Could you perhaps suggest a sophisticated way to you know, sort of project the thing that you don't necessarily need that business? You know, we talked about the principle. Now I would think that this would be about tactics. So yes. How would you do it to sort of subtly, you know, say that we can do this, but we don't need to do this.
Right.
And, yeah.
I think you actually did that really good with that bank. And obviously in sales, there's that thing, customer acquisition cost. If you're a SaaS company, well, even a services company, you should have your customer acquisition costs down. So if you see the sales cycle is, you know, prolonged and it's going over your traditional or regular or average sales cycle, you got to know there's something off here, right? I personally never fully walk away from the deal. Like I said, I have that structure, nurture, right? That's kind of walking away, but you never know what's going to happen with that organization. Maybe the decision maker is going to, but I'm not going to dedicate as much bandwidth. Maybe I sell them 1 or 2 touches during the year just to see how the things are, maybe that little value, and they say, oh my God, you know, the things change here. We actually want to work with you. But I guess the question was, you know, how to do it in a sophisticated way. See if they're going beyond this average sales cycle, and then, you know, leave in a positive note and say, guys, you know, I would say like, look, we've been going in cycles here. You know, we did this presentation always go back that you did your part. We showed, you told us your pain. This is how we're going to fix it. This is how much time we're saving. This is how much money quantified. This is the value that we provide. I just felt we did this presentation a few times. Perhaps internally, you guys have to hash things out. Why don't we just leave you guys and, you know, maybe make a decision, but we also have other customers and other clients that we have to tend to. And I'm sure you can appreciate that because you have customers. And maybe we can, you know, circle back, you know, let us know when you're ready to make a decision, and we'll circle back, you know, down the road. So you kind of put it in on them, right? You're not closing the door. Things can change. The decision maker can change. They can get a new budget. The new regulation can be passed. And now all of a sudden your service is needed. You're building solutions, you know, they're like, oh my God, now we need the software, right? We got to go back. So keep that door open, you know, but put them in nurture, you know, leave elegantly, but leave a door open for them to come back. But protect your bandwidth, protect your customer acquisition cost, you know, making sure that it doesn't go beyond, you know, something that's already average or regular.
So, and I just have to ask this additional one, and I'm going to let you go to have the rest of your day. What about injecting scarcity or urgency? What I mean by that is, you know, sometimes I used either simulated or, you know, real constraints in my offer. Like, okay, guys, we are accepting, you know, new clients by, you know, the 10th of February, and that's it. Or, you know, guys, this offer lasts for 5 days, and then after that, it might be on the table, it might not, it might be under other conditions. I sometimes had success with that, sometimes I hadn't. However, I also heard some folks that swear by it, and I've seen them have success. Have you had any firsthand experience with that?
That actually was, the reason I'm laughing, that was my life. Last 7 years with McAfee and Intel Security.
Wow.
We, you know, we tend to used to get a lot of deals, 50% of revenue. We're talking like, you know, these are big companies. 50% revenue would come in the last 3 days. Why? Because the sales reps would position it like, you know, they're trying to sell a deal, you know, it's not going anywhere. And then they put a constraint like, hey, this is a one-time, we're going to lower it to this amount, but you have to, so these are publicly traded companies, so you have end of the quarter, right? It's midnight, like there's no, it's a serious thing, right? And they would tell them, when the clock hits, you know, 11:59, 12, like this deal is gone. Like I cannot do anything. And they really cannot, you know, because the managers, the VP of sales would say like, we can do this, but they have to sign, you know, by a specific thing. We would literally stay in the office like sometimes 3, 4 o'clock in the morning because these deals will come in and then you have to process these orders and stuff like that. So yes.
Yeah, awesome.
Yes, it can be used. Big companies are using it, right? You have to stick by it. That's a big one because if you don't stick by it, they come back to you. They're like, you're just telling us that we come back. But if they come back to you, like after that constraint, after that deadline that you gave them, I'm sorry, this was only, you know, I was only able to get this approved, and you have to live by it, right? And that's when it worked. That's when it works. So, you know, that's a lot of companies are using that. Big companies are using that. You know, it's first you're trying to sell it at the full price at the beginning of the core, right? You're trying to present all the value, but you see you have to, you know, maybe work on the pricing a little bit. But if you work on the pricing, if you lower it, you know, yes, absolutely, give some kind of deadline. You know, don't leave it open-ended, you know, in this case, open-ended when it comes to the timeline. We'll come back. Create, like you said, sense of urgency. That's very important. And create that supply and demand. Like, hey, this is only going to be available to this time. And, you know, present it like you definitely provided them value. But now they have to have a skin in the game. They have to come up with the goods. They have to, because you are going to bat for them. Now they have to do something for you. And you can present it like, hey, I did this for you. You know, let me know if we can make this happen because I really want you guys to enjoy this service and this product. But here's that deadline that it has to happen by. And they will ask, where do I sign?
Thank you so much for this. This is really great. I learned a ton. Hopefully all of you guys who have stuck around with us on this live stream have too, and hopefully many of you will learn more by watching this afterwards. Thank you so much, Alex, again for this amazing chat and presentation. I really enjoyed this and learned a ton. And we'll be making more of these. So stay tuned, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you. Hvala.